We've now finished step 1, and it's time to move on to step 2, where we're going to create our tree class. Now before we start doing any implementation here, I want to open up the test file inside of my tree directory. We're going to scroll down a little bit and enable the next set of tests in here. So around line 32 or so, we should find the .skip statement for the tree. So I'm going to delete .skip, save the file, and now back in my terminal, I should see an additional 3 tests that are failing. Okay, so we definitely got the tests running. Let's go back to our index.js file and read up on the next step here. So step number 2 says create the tree class. Inside the tree constructor, we should initialize a root property to null. So let's take a look at a diagram to kind of explain what the purpose of the tree class is supposed to be here. So here's the tree class. We're going to assign a root property to it. This root property is going to contain a reference to the absolute head of our tree, or the root of our tree. This is essentially doing the same type of setup that we did over with our linked list as well. So you will recall with our linked list, we had the linked list class that had a head reference that pointed at the very first node on our linked list. So we're doing exactly the same thing here. We've got the tree class, and it's going to point to the root node. Now also a part of the tree class are going to be our 2 traverse methods, which remember are going to be the methods to iterate through every node on the tree, either in a depth first search fashion or a breadth first search fashion. So we'll first start off with implementing the tree class, and then we'll start worrying about the 2 traverse methods that we're going to put together. So back in my code editor, I'm going to scroll on down to the tree class right here. Now the implementation of this is going to be rather straightforward. So we're going to define the constructor function, and we're going to initialize the this.root property to be null. So when we first create a tree, it's going to start off with an empty root property, and that's it. Nothing else in here to do. So an example of using the tree class in the wild might be to do something like, say, const node would be new node with some amount of data, then to create a tree, and then we would manually update the root property of the tree, like so. So now the tree thinks that its root node is the node we just created. All right, and I am going to clean up this code right here. Now one thing that you'll notice about this tree implementation is that we did not add on, and we're not saying that we're going to add on any type of insert or remove methods to this thing like we had done previously with the linked list. The reason for that is that with the linked list, the linked list class was really in charge of all the elements inside the linked list. Yes, the linked list had references to each subsequent element, or each node had references to each subsequent element. But if we called add or remove on that thing, on the linked list, it was more or less kind of obvious how we wanted to operate on the linked list. But in the case of a tree, whenever we start to want to add or remove elements from it, we have to very precisely specify which node we want to be adding or removing elements from. And so in the context of a tree, usually we associate manipulating the tree in some fashion, like these add and remove methods, with an actual node. Because it doesn't quite, it's kind of hard to envision how we might call add or remove on a tree. Like if we call add, which node are we trying to add this new node to, right? It doesn't quite make as much sense. And so that's why we took this different approach this time around with add and remove. Okay, so we got our constructor put together. Now we're going to start working on our 2 traverse methods, the breadth first search and the depth first search. These are going to take some amount of time to set up and explain. So let's take a pause right now. We'll come back in the next video and have a lot of time to set up and give you a good description of exactly how you can put these methods together. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a second.